Do numbers have meanings? Of course they do. Now, I was corrected by Flatoids. He corrected me in the comment section, and he said, no, numbers do have meanings. Now, in my last video, I implied that numbers don't have meanings, or they don't have meanings yet, and we give them meanings. What I was doing is I was talking a little bit out of context. So your perception will create your reality. Now, we assume that things have meanings, and we don't even look at those meanings of those things. So a big theme of my page is, what do you know and how do you know it? Now, the answer to that question is government. Even if you're against government, it's government. That's just how you know what you know. They're the ones that control the information. It's just true. Now, you go back to other governments and see what they said, and you go back to the people that challenge governments and you see what they said, and you go, oh, okay. You're either doing what the government's saying or doing what the opposite of what the government is saying. I started calling myself a flat earther way before I even knew what flat earth was, because I was going against the government, and I was saying, if the government's saying it's a spinning ball, then it's probably flat. And if people said it was flat before, then there's probably something there. And I was just going through I was doing a basic George Costanza play where I said I was going to do the opposite of what the government told me. There's a funny Seinfeld episode where George said, nothing in my life is working out, so I'm going to do the opposite of my instincts, and then maybe my life will start working out. So he went up to a girl and said, hi, I'm George, I'm unemployed and live with my parents. And she's like, hi, George, nice to meet you. And he got a job with the New York Yankees, and it was funny. He was making a joke, but I took that and I said, okay, well, if the government's lying, and they're lying about 9/11, and they're lying about putting poison in our food and water, and Hitler did it, and Hitler blew up buildings to start wars, and Nero did it, and Nero blew up buildings, and Nero put his face on money, and Constantine put his face on money, and then you look at the Bible, and you say, well, what does the Bible say? The Bible says don't have money, don't have the tabernacle, don't have the temple, don't have a trading system, don't manipulate the value of money. This is God's earth, and don't manipulate it. So I was like, well, then what's God's earth? I mean, they're telling us Earth is a spinning ball. Well, what is it? And I didn't really know, but I was like, all right, let's just run the opposite through a test and see where we get. And I was running around telling people the Earth is flat, and trying to figure out what this Earth is and trying to brand it. And then, lo and behold, we figured out that the Earth is not a spinning ball, and it's controlled by government in our mind. Now, the code of this Earth is a number system, and it does have value. And it does have meaning to it. Oh, yeah. And Flatoids was correct in that. He's saying, no, in God's earth, the numbers all have meanings. And he's absolutely right. But what I was trying to do is, I was speaking from a perspective, because most people don't give value to 0 and 1. God has some really special numbers, and all the numbers are special, but they've been stolen from us. So 33 is really popular in occultic circles. 23 is really popular in occultic circles. And I was kind of coming at it at that perspective, where they don't give a lot of credit to 0 and 1. They don't give credit to 13. They don't like 7. They don't like those numbers, because those are God numbers. Those point to a fixed and outside of the creation power source. Point to a God. They point to a creator. Just people that understand numbers and understand math go, oh yeah, 0 and 1, 0 especially, it points to a God. We don't know what 0 is. We know what 1 is, we know what 2 is, and it comes out of 0. We don't like 7 because 7 has like this thing outside of the number. We don't like 13 because 13 is even more so. Now, with that energy, can you create realms that are outside of our time and outside of our existence? Can you see God? I think you can, and I think that's one of the things they're hiding. So they do it with 23. They do it with 33. They do it with taking certain dates and certain numbers and then projecting energy in those numbers and then creating these magical experiences, creating these crises. There is a calendar that is a fixed international calendar where you always know where the sun is in relation to the earth. The sun rotates around the earth, and then it rotates around the earth not in a number that divides evenly. So 365.2 or whatever the point is, the sun does not divide equally into something we could put on a piece of paper, something we can put on a calendar. There will be a day outside of our calendar, or we have to account for those days, and they do it by putting in leap years. So we're under the Gregorian calendar, and the Gregorian calendar has 12 months, and then some have 31, some have 30, some have 29, and some even have 28. And then every 4 years there's a leap year to make up for that lost time. We want to account for every time. The other calendar, the International Fixed Calendar, has 13 months, has 28 days, and then has a day or two that we just don't add to our calendar. We don't really call them leap years. We just let them be days out of time. Now, what would happen if we did that? Would God show up? Would the energy of the world then connect to a God, connect to a creator, and he show up? Would we all be able to go outside and say, holy, holy, holy is the Lord God Almighty, who was and is to come? And would he show up? I believe he would. And I believe that's what they're hiding. And there is extreme power in numbers. There's extreme power in numbers. But to get there, what I was trying to do is separate the meaning of numbers because we're so tied to numbers. Now, if you've already broken out of the government's thinking, then maybe you're not, and you're tied to God's numbers, and you'll be able to see it. But 23 is just, it equals 5, and it hides 5. So 5 is a shadow. The shape of 5 has 5 different shapes that reflect equally to itself. And you're using the piece of the creation to then have this emotional experience. So people do rituals in order to see dragons, in order to see other beings. And they're using this fifth dimensional energy. The multiverse is a version of the fifth dimension where you're going to places where your hopes and your dreams are. Now, it is real because people do it and then they talk about it, and it isn't archived in any sign or symbol. It's archived by us sharing the experience and talking about it, and it's always the same thing. It's always the same deities they're seeing. It's always the same experience. So by us mirroring it to each other, it is real, and there is a spiritual realm. Now they're going to a lower spiritual realm because they're just doing selfishness. They just want to use the creation to recreate the creation. And I guess that's what the gist of what I'm getting to with the shape of numbers, with my whole series on the shape of numbers. I'm trying to show you that there's dimensional fields, there's higher dimensional fields, there's lower dimensional fields, and if you play with them with selfish intentions, then you just go to the lower dimensional fields. You go to the fifth dimension. The fourth dimension is just time, and our time is set by the sun, the moon, and the stars. It's really just the sun, and you can manipulate it to get a selfish experience. The whole earth has been turned into this thing called selfishness. It's called idolatry, where you're taking the idol to become God or worship a false god. It's either one or the same. Our world is doing it to become God. So we've come full circle where we're not just worshiping false gods, we're worshiping false gods to become God. We want everybody to pay attention to us. The whole point of life is just to manipulate value and be more valuable than other people. To get clicks on your YouTube page, to get clicks on your Twitter, to get clicks on your Facebook, to have all your friends and family pay attention to you. Pay attention to you and you alone. Well, if it doesn't reciprocate back to them, then it's like they don't exist. You have to mirror it back. You have to mirror it back and forth. You have to have a relationship. It has to be reciprocal. It has to sustain. It has to recreate and regenerate. And people don't want to do that. People don't want to have kids because they don't want to give all their time and energy to another being that's outside of themselves. They want to sacrifice that for their career, for their then to have all the experiences for themselves. And that is that creates dimensional fields, and that is represented in numbers. And we're coming up on a year called 2023. 2020 was a loop. If you follow sacred geometry or even gematria, you know there was a lot of fun things you could do with 2020. Now 2021, 2 and 1, that's more of a plane. That's more of a reset. That's more of a start. But it's a start of a new thing. What's the new period? It's this new tyrannical government. Now they don't have the star juice like they used to, and it's also just something that's outside of the numbers. It's just objectively true. You usually go with the objective, and then you come back and find the signs how they were doing it. They created it before we got there, so they used 2020. They knew on that year they could get away with some stuff. 2021 is just recontinuation of that. 2023, you're going to see him really go hard with it, and you'll probably see him call on a lot of these deities, and you'll see a lot of the Epstein stuff, and you'll see a lot of the cult stuff come out in public, and you'll see people doing it in public because they're getting desperate. Now, it's also an election year the next year in 2024, so every time right before an election year, or in that election cycle, you see things getting really heated. But I think what you're going to see is you're going to see them calling on the supernatural, calling on the fifth dimension to bleed the fifth dimension into the third dimension to kind of create a new reality for us so they can become our gods. If you remember in the episode in Game of Thrones, they sacrificed that child before they went into war. It's that kind of thing. Every once in a while, you usually do pagan rituals behind closed doors, but then when you're absolutely desperate, you do them in the open to call on the power, and then it's usually the end of your charade. And it seems like it's the end of their charade. By 2024, you'll see like death in 2024. You'll see the beginning of that death in 2023. And then by 2025, things will start to get good, I think. And you could use the number code to get there, but you could also just, if you understand politics, if you understand economic cycles, it just can't get too much worse than it is now. It's got to get better. People are just too poor, and they're not going to put up with this anymore. They're not going to put up with this crazy fake government too much longer. And 2023 is going to be a wild year. So a couple of predictions. Look for Warren Buffett to declare emperor. Look at him to there probably won't be a 2024 election. It will probably just be Warren will step in and he'll just run the show. Because they're all his businesses anyway. He owns everything. So he's just going to step up for the Bilderberg group and just be like, yeah, I'm emperor now. Emperor of the world. Look for that to happen. You'll start seeing him making moves in 2023 for sure. And there will be a bunch of other crazy things. You'll start seeing the Hollywood elite really come out as demon worshippers and devil worshippers. The Hollywood people are just doing voodoo, and they're not satisfied with the fact that people don't worship them, and they don't worship them anymore. They're losing their market share. Everybody's on YouTube trying to become famous, and on Instagram trying to become famous, and the Hollywood actors are absolutely just destroyed over this. They just hate it, and you're going to start seeing them really expose themselves. It's going to be wild. It's going to be absolutely wild. But yeah, there are huge meanings in numbers, and he's absolutely right. There's meanings in numbers. 0 and 1 is the plane. It's God's planes of existence. 1 and 2 is the beginning and the end, the Alpha and the Omega. That's God holding an existence for us, and not just existence, but the creation, the 3. Out of that comes 3. Out of that comes his child, his children. He's our Father, and we live on 3, and we're 3. But he creates 3. Oh, that's beautiful. And then 4 is time, sun, moon, and the stars. Oh, how pretty. And then he creates that for us. Oh, wow, that's magical. 5 and 6 are when we do it selfishly. It creates this shape that we just reflect ourselves. We're not reflecting God. We're not reflecting from a higher vanishing point. When we understand that the sun, moon, and the stars are God's creation, oh, wow, it just seems so much more beautiful. And then, yeah, maybe we'll even connect to something outside of out of 4, another vanishing point, out of 7, see a God, see a creator. And then 9 and 10 are just like time loop and power grid, and then back to 1 and 0, the Alpha and the Omega, the beginning and the end, the God of creator, of creation, the name above all names, the Yahweh, the name above all names, the God of gods, the Lord of lords, the creator of existence itself. And numbers are his language. To him, numbers are the code, and numbers are beautiful, and numbers are so meaningful. Absolutely. You're absolutely right.